After over 2,000 years, the book of Revelation continues to draw us in and leave us running scared in equal measure. And yet it remains one of the most important but also misunderstood books of Scripture. Revelation contains a number of different genres or styles of writing. But one of the things that makes Revelation a particularly uncomfortable read for many is the violence in its imagery. Slaughter with a sword, hail and fire mixed with blood, plagues and beasts from the abyss don't really make for comforting or uplifting reading before bedtime. So how do we deal with the violent bits? Here are 5 things to consider. The first thing to say is that we're not invited to respond in violence to the oppression and injustice that we see in our world. From the beginning in chapter 1 verse 9, the writer of Revelation is clear that he's speaking to those who share the patient endurance required by any who suffer because of their witness to Christ. We're to be like Jesus. There will be times when we suffer, but we're called to be patient, faithful, and hope-filled followers. The second thing to notice is to do with culture. In the West, we're largely insulated and protected from the violence that can be an everyday occurrence for people in many parts of the world today, and has been throughout history. We experience violence and conflict secondhand through the media, and can almost avoid it entirely if we tried. Even the food many of us eat is cut, cleaned, and prepared behind closed doors. So our Sunday roast just appears without us having to give a second thought to putting on a pair of wellies and going out to catch it. It makes us easily shocked and disturbed by the violence that has been a part of daily living for so many. The third thing to think about is metaphor. A major characteristic of Revelation is its imagery and symbolism. And this metaphorical language can be difficult for lots of us to navigate. And so in order to make sense of some of the violence, we have to deepen our understanding of metaphor. And in the case of Revelation, it means working to understand in detail the particular context of the book. Who was it originally written for? And what word pictures would have made sense to those people during that specific historical period? Much of the conflict described is a metaphor for the spiritual conflict between God and the powers that oppose him and his people, and it shouldn't always be taken literally. Fourthly, interpretation. How we interpret the text makes a huge difference to the images of violence we come across. If we see Revelation as describing the things that are going to happen, the 4 horsemen in chapter 6, for example, become end-time disasters to be unleashed on the world and are very literal. But if we take a different interpretation of Revelation 12, which depicts a woman, a dragon, and a war breaking out in heaven, and see it as a depiction of Jesus' death, resurrection, and victory over the spiritual forces that oppose God, it enables us to read about the horsemen in chapter 6 quite differently. It depicts the world as it is, and the cross shows God's response of love and judgment to the world, and is the means by which God's perfect future will come about. Finally, canon. We should remember to read Revelation in the context of the rest of the Bible. It's not the only part of the New Testament to use violent imagery. Often, Jesus' own teaching references judgment in no uncertain terms. See Mark 9, for example, for talk of unquenching hellfire. The problem of violence is part of a much bigger question for us to wrestle with, relating to the whole of the New Testament. And perhaps that's an idea we'll explore in a future Sunday sermon series. But in Revelation, as in the New Testament, the striking and intense nature of violent imagery helps us to realize what is at stake and to take it seriously. A life of faith comes with a cost our brothers and sisters around the world pay each and every day. And those who pay that price of commitment need to know their sacrifice counts for something and hasn't been in vain. Being a follower of Jesus really is a matter of life and death. Are we ready to be challenged and stirred to action for the sake of the kingdom?